All right, this month's expert interview, we're interviewing Ed Lyon. Edward is graduated. I'm going to read what was on your website and hope it's still accurate, Ed. He's a graduate of Hamilton College and the University of Cincinnati College of Law, where he served as executive director of the University of Cincinnati Law Review. Began his career as a legislative analyst for U.S. Representative Jack Kemp and Dick Cheney. Ed is the creator of Tax Coach software system for tax planning professionals, co-founder and vice president of the American Institute for Certified Tax Coaches, has appeared on over 200 television, radio, and internet broadcasts, including CNN's Saturday Morning and Sunday Morning, CNBC's Power Lunch, MSNBC's Morning Blend, Fox News Channels, Fox News Now, Fox on Money, even appeared on the Roseanne Show. I'm not going to ask how that happened, where you were dubbed as the funniest tax guy in America. The bar's set real low there, guy. Ed, I want to thank you, though. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You just figured out how I made it there.
Yeah. Ed, I want to thank you for joining us. And really, it's our October issue, but it comes out so late in the month that it's really November. And
Okay.
it comes out in October, and that's tax planning time. And I wanted to, talk to you a little bit about what we're, my favorite subject anyways, and obviously yours, since you've created a couple of businesses on it. Talk to me a little bit. Why did you decide to create Tax Coach software?
Well, what I saw when I first launched my personal service practice was a lot of very good tax professionals focusing on compliance. And any good tax professional can put the quote-unquote right numbers in the right boxes on the right forms and get them filed by the right deadlines. But what they do is they take the history you give them and they record it and they call it a day. What I wanted to do with my clients was help them write history with a menu of proactive concepts and strategies that most of us in the tax field are familiar with, but we did not have the right sort of tools to bring those strategies to our clients. Tax Coach software actually grew out of a client engagement with my partner Keith Vandestad, who at the time was simply a client. I had come up with a written tax plan, a pen and ink thing, a Microsoft Word document actually that I was customizing for individual clients. We were sitting at the bar after lunch at Teller's here in Hyde Park Square in Cincinnati, and I looked at Keith, I looked down at his report that I created for him, and I said, it would be fun to turn this into an interactive software that accountants across the country could use with their clients. Keith's a systems consultant. He looked at me and he said, I think I could do that. And really, it was as simple as that. We took a tool and made it more widely available. But the focus is on planning. And you're absolutely right to be having this conversation in October for planning in November and December. People think of taxes as a once-a-year exercise. And they think of April 15th as the important deadline for taxes. Well, if your taxes are at all complicated, tax planning is a year-round opportunity, and as far as deadlines are concerned, April 15th don't have nothing on December 31st. That's the real important one.
Yeah, I tend to totally agree with you, that obviously. From there, you went on and you did the nonprofit that you set up, the American Institute of Certified Tax Coaches, which, how many members do you have? What's going on there?
We have close to 200 members across the country. Certified tax coaches are tax professionals who have taken specialized training on proactive tax planning. Again, the goal here is we're not reporting history, we're helping to write it. And as Tax Coach grew, as the system became more popular within the profession, we realized that we were creating a group of tax professionals who had a specific interest and a specific expertise. So we created the AICTC to give them a place to come together for training and where they could get the designation so that they could advertise in their community this very distinctive focus on planning rather than compliance.
And since you're separating the preparation from the planning, they could use one of your coaches even if they had their brother doing their tax return or did their own or had a friend, a college buddy, or...
Our certified tax coaches have clients who do their own taxes, but who don't understand the planning. You can sit down with a program like TurboTax if you really feel comfortable with it, But TurboTax isn't going to tell you to hire your spouse and set up a medical expense reimbursement plan to write off your daughter's braces as a business expense. TurboTax isn't going to say switch from a single member LLC to an S corporation so that you can cut your employment tax in half.
Mm-hmm.
TurboTax is a tool, and it's a great tool, but it's only as good as the person who uses it. But yes, to your direct question, a certified tax coach can help with the planning, and then you can have a different professional do the preparation, or even do the preparation yourself if that's what you feel comfortable with. In practice, most clients do end up hiring the certified tax coach to do the compliance work as well, because tax planning is an ongoing process. I can sit here and I can say, Wayne, I want to sit down with you and do a tax plan for you. And we can do a tax plan here in November of 2012. But that tax plan is going to have to change, because taxes are going to change. Taxes are going to change, and we're going to talk about this a little later in the interview. Taxes are going to change at the end of this year. Taxes are going to change next year. Taxes are going to change 3 years down the road. And that tax plan that I create for you in October of 2012 is going to get out of date very quickly.
Yeah, and I've been doing this a long time. You said the gray hair, you're not wrong. I've been doing this 30 plus years. And some of the things
I've got a little gray.
Yeah, you're not. You got a lot less. You got a lot of catching up to do there.
I got a lot to go. Yes.
But I mean, one of the things you brought up, the best client to work with is the one that will work with me all year round. Second best is the one that'll let me do some year-end tax planning, and the worst is the one that dumps their stuff off this week, which I've had, which we're firing. We're getting rid of more and more of those. And in reality, one of the things I learned from you is that probably all new business clients, I'm basically not accepting them unless they're doing tax planning with me. That's part of the package.
I reached that point years ago, and many certified tax.
You're a little smarter than me.
They won't take a new client without doing the planning. A client who hasn't dumped his stuff off to you yet for the October 15th deadline is not a planning client. They're coming to you to get their tax return filled out.
Right.
But you've got a lot more to offer, and the gray hair speaks to that. The gray hair and the 30 years of experience mean that you have a lot more to offer that client than simply preparing a tax return.
Right.
That client is going to get more out of you. You're going to have a better ongoing relationship. Hell, you and the client are both going to have more fun doing it. Why do business with somebody who simply wants a tax return when you can find people out there who want savings?
Bingo. I'm going to back up a little bit and let's go back to the basics. Let's say you're sitting in front of a business owner. What do you tell them is the importance for tax planning? 30-second elevator speech type thing.
Well, the 30-second elevator speech is we need to be looking ahead at what's going to happen. I have no idea if you're a hockey fan or if anybody watching the program is a hockey fan. Well, then you know what quote I'm about to throw out, and it's Wayne Gretzky, and he said, "I don't skate to where the puck is. I skate to where the puck is going to be."
Right.
Most accountants do a great job of telling the client where the puck is and where the puck has been. But it's more important to know where the puck is going to be. Here's another reason to focus on tax planning. If you're running a business, you're facing all sorts of external circumstances that affect your dollars and cents. Your customers may change. You may have competition. Your customers make decisions. We're in a recession. We're in a bad economy. Maybe we're in a recession. Maybe we're not. All sorts of external factors. But tax planning gives a business owner control over their circumstances that they may not have on the business side. I look at business owners. If you want to put more money in your pocket, you got two ways to do it. There's financial offense, which is making more money. There's financial defense, which is spending less money. You have more control over what you spend than what you make. And when it comes to financial defense, for most business owners, most clients you're working with, I guarantee taxes are their biggest single expense.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, you can save 15% on your car insurance by switching to Geico. But what's that really going to do for you in the long run?
And that's kind of part of why I almost begged you to interview, because I've been thinking about why more business owners don't do tax planning. And kind of truthfully, I think I have to throw it back on CPAs and tax preparers, because we don't sell it. We don't explain the importance. I think the number one reason they don't do it. And I was curious what you think.
You are exactly right. We don't communicate the importance of it. And here it's a failing. It's a weakness in the tax field people think that taxes are a numbers game. They look at forms and they think of numbers, and it's not about math. I went to law school because there's no math. And when it comes to a tax return, any reasonably competent fifth grader can handle the math on a form.
Right.
Tax planning is about ideas. It's about concepts.
Mhm.
Should you be a sole proprietor or should you be an S corporation? It's about strategies. Should you have a health savings account or should you have a medical expense reimbursement plan? And that's all about communicating to clients. The problem with most accountants is we don't do a very good job communicating our value to our clients. And our clients don't know what we can do for
Right.
them. Well, how would they know if we don't communicate it? So my question for everybody watching right now is, how much is your accountant worth to you? Most people watching this broadcast have no idea
Mhm.
because their accountant has never sat down with them. And most new tax coach members, I'll sit down with new tax coach members and have a conversation, and I will ask them, when is the last time you sat down with a client and said, here's how much I am worth? And most accountants say, well, I've never done that.
Mhm.
They haven't. They're not communicating their own value, and part of that problem is they're not communicating the value of planning. So they run a busy practice. You may have hundreds of clients with all sorts of competing deadlines and priorities. You're juggling a lot of things in the air. It's hard to create the time to sit down with a client and say, you know what, it's November. We need to sit down and look at where you're going. We need to look at what's happening with taxes this year. We need to look at what's happening in Washington. Otherwise, we're going to have a real ugly surprise come April 15th, and it's going to get even uglier in the coming years.
Right. And then I always did tax planning. The difference was I always did it with my biggest clients because it's time consuming to do it right,
To do it right, it is
especially with the complicated people. What your software did, and like I said, I used it for the first time last year, and there was two things it did, and I'm going to touch on one. It literally gave me a tool that I could sit somebody on my staff and say, enter the basic information.
Right.
And the key, that's the easy part.
Yeah.
Before it was the hard part because I didn't have a format to follow. I was kind of doing what you were doing, recreating the wheel every time.
You didn't have a deliverable.
Bingo, right? And
tax coach gives you the deliverable.
right. And because the key thing we're bringing is what you said is the years of experience and what's in looking at somebody's situation and figuring out where they're at. But the other thing you said that I think is key is proactive. And now when I'm explaining to a business owner, I give them two scenarios that happened to me this year, and they're not going to. One of them's never going to happen again if I have anything to say about it. Matter of fact, I do, and it's not.
Uh-huh.
And one is, that client came in and they're rocking along with a business every year, and they owe $10,000, and they double their income, and they drop it off, April 10th, and I'm telling them April 15th they owe $45,000, and they're having a cow. What
Right.
they don't understand is and I want you to expand a little bit on this one point, is the number of tools that I have available before the end of the year. I just don't have anywhere near that many arrows in my quiver after the end of the year. I'm just basically a historian at that point. Hey, I got a few things to do, but you're right. I let you expand from there.
Well, absolutely. You have, as a tax professional, all sorts of perfectly legal tools at your disposal to help clients save money on taxes. But there's a deadline on those tools, and it's midnight, December 31st. And at midnight, your tax tools, they're like Cinderella's carriage. They turn into a pumpkin, and your client is stuck needing to pay $45,000 to get home from the ball.
I'm going to steal that analogy, Ed.
Go ahead. It's a great analogy because people understand it.
Yeah.
It goes back to what we talked about 2 minutes ago with accountants not communicating the value of planning.
That's
And
right.
if the client doesn't understand the value of planning, how can you expect them to say, yes, I'll go ahead and pay the cost for a planning engagement? They don't see the savings you can create. And I've sat down with clients more times than I can count, and for a couple $1,000 fee, saved them $10,000 a year for
Easy.
every year easily.
Mhm.
In Cincinnati, they're building a casino a couple miles from here. Well, if I could walk into that casino with $2,000 and know that I could walk out the door with 10, I would do it every day. Hell, some days I do it in the morning, go out for lunch, and come back and do it again in the afternoon.
Yeah.
It's the best money that they can spend, but they yes, you have to get to them before December 31st, or you simply
Right.
don't have enough available strategies. You have to understand what's coming. Lots of clients will fill out an organizer for their accountant before the taxes are due. So the client will drop off their 1099s and all their investment statements, things like that. And there's an organizer, and it starts with a couple of pages of questions. Check if you've gotten married, you've gotten divorced, you've had a kid, you're saving for college. I always thought it was silly to send those out in January because the time to ask those questions is right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. And which leads to the second part of the story that I tell a client is there's another client who called me, and I would not have called him because he fell into that sin. And I want to come back to that in a second, but that's why I wouldn't have called him and why that was a mistake. All right. He calls me last September and goes, I might have a tax problem. I'm doing pretty well. I said, well, bring it on by. Let me take a look at it. And I sit down with him and go, yeah, you're going to owe $95,000. And using yours thing, I told him what I was going to do and showed him examples. I had always used a spreadsheet where this is what I originally did. These are the steps we do. This is what I saved you. All right. And I gave him kind of examples with the names removed and say, I can't promise anything, but, I'm sure I can save you because I already knew I could. I mean, that's one thing you taught me right off the bat. Stop giving the darn store away because I don't see value on it. I'm going to come back to that in a minute, too. I sat down with him. We sit down, do some perfectly legal things. I tell him he's going to owe about $25,000. When I do the return, it came in around 28 because there were some things, but no big deal. This guy's not yelling and screaming at me. For him, I'm a hero. But more importantly, he had control. Because one thing I know with most business owners, if I tell them 6 months from now they're going to need $25,000, they'll figure out a way to get it. If I tell them they need it 6 days from now,
it's a little tougher.
And that's the difference between the two, and that's kind of what I mean. There's a serious difference. And now, truthfully, a mistake that I felt I made is that everybody can actually do tax planning, and that's something I learned from your program. Our tax system's so invasive that it affects every part of everybody's life, doesn't it?
Every financial transaction you make, every financial decision you make has a tax consequence, even if it's as simple as buying a Diet Coke and a pack of gum at the gas station. Every financial choice you make has a tax consequence. Now, for some people, there's not anything they can do. If their income is low enough that they're not paying a lot of federal income tax, if they are simply earning salary income where there's really no planning opportunity, the best you can do is record history and send them on their way. The issue with tax planning isn't the amount of income, by the way. This is a misconception. Somebody might think, oh, I don't make enough money, the tax planning counts. It's how you make your money and not how much money you make that really counts.
Right.
I had 1 week a few years ago where I had meetings with 2 clients. The first was a plumbing contractor making $40,000 a year, running his own business. The second was a CEO of a local service company with a $400,000 salary. But it was $400,000 on a W-2 as salary. I really wasn't able to do anything to save the $400,000 guy taxes, but I was able to save the $40,000 a year plumbing contractor $3,000 a year in taxes. When you can save a guy nearly 10% of his annual income in taxes, you're a hero. And he doesn't have to be a millionaire for you to be a hero.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. You said the key thing there, and if the audience for the magazine is small business owners, and really there isn't any, because of how they get their income, it really, and misconception is, and I kind of wrote it down, I'm not going to go over each piece, but I mean sole proprietor, whether it's sole proprietor, corporation, S-corp partnerships, all of those have different planning advice, but they're all in business, and the fact that they're in business means they really all can use tax planning, can't they?
Well, absolutely. And a question for all the business owners watching is, when you started your business, you decided on an entity, whether it was a proprietorship, a corporation, a partnership, an LLC. I'll bet you have never looked at that decision since. You've never, it might be 10 or 15 years after, but you've never looked at that decision. Why are you still the entity you were when you started a decade ago? A question as simple as that can open the door to tremendous planning opportunities. And this goes back to why accountants don't necessarily do planning. We think of planning as something we might do with new clients, but it really is just as important to do with ongoing clients. And we get in a rut. It's human nature.
Yeah.
We have the same way we've been doing business and the same things we've been looking at, and we just get in a rut. And sometimes we have to force ourselves to step back and look at the relationship with a new set of eyes and say, okay, what are we missing here? What could we be missing here? What could we be doing better? And you push yourself to do better every year.
Yeah. And your program actually has a couple things from a preparer standpoint. And the tax coach, I joked about having to change my hat from being I'm out there putting out fires to running a magazine. You hit a key point right there. I mean, when I reset myself again, I'll take a week or two off, and November 1st is kind of tax planning time. And I do get kind of aggravated because it seems like everybody's enjoying Christmas, but until January, I'm not slow.
Right. No, December's a busy month for us. When I was managing my personal service practice, I typically billed more for planning in December than I did for preparation in April.
And I don't doubt that, seeing how the way you put it together. And really, the key things that I saw with your program and what you teach your tax coaches that I think is really good is not just the tax planning, it's the tax educating. I mean, when I was using your system last time, I didn't realize what I was doing until I was in the middle of it. And I realized that, really now I understand it. So now when I'm talking to people, because I've been selling it all year as I'm doing the return, I'm signing them up and saying, hey, you're a target, man. I mean, we need to talk.
Right.
And one of the things I'm talking about is like it's like any other game. You mentioned hockey. I don't care what the game is. If you don't know the rules, you don't know how to play, and you don't know how to win. The tax system is just another game that every business owner is playing, whether they want to or not. So your program is great.
And if you're a typical business owner, you're Division 3. The IRS is Division 1A. They're the big guys. You might be Stanislaus Community College, but you're playing Notre Dame. You better bring your A game.
And you didn't design that program by accident. That was a key component of what you were trying to put together, wasn't it?
Education is an important part for several reasons. The first is simply what you just said. Business owners need to understand the basics of how the tax system works. They need to be able to have an intelligent conversation with their tax advisor. The second part is a little more subtle, and this goes to one of the key parts of the value for tax coach. And what I tell tax coach members is we do not want the clients to perceive that the value comes from the plan. When you use Tax Coach, it gives you a nice deliverable. It might be a 30 or 40 page report with your biography, your photo, your logo, all that kind of stuff. The client can look down at it and say, great, we've got this report. But the value is not in the report. The value is in the gray hair. The value is in the experience, and the value is having the advisor and educating the client a little bit. Communicates your value to the client. If the client understands how convoluted and how ridiculous the tax system is, the client is going to be more likely to accept your guidance and your judgment navigating through that jungle.
And it is a jungle. I mean, I was sitting down delivering a tax return to somebody that I thought knew this. I mean, and just going through the itemized deductions and explaining, hey, it's going to go from 7.5% on medical to 10%. And he stops me and goes, what are you talking about? And I went, I've said this every year for 8 years. You never stopped me before.
Right.
It's like, so we go over that and a few other things. And you're right. But going to something you said that's more important too, it starts the conversation.
Yes.
Because from that, a lot of times as a tax, especially as CPAs, but I'm sure most tax advisors, we learn our clients, and we've got the ability to learn from a lot of other clients, and we see things they're doing wrong that we just don't have time. I'm sorry, when I'm doing 600 returns in a 4-month period, really, I mean, if I count the extension time, we're in crank mode. It's an assembly line. Sorry, all right. When I have the chance to sit down and actually look at the return from a planning standpoint, I'm bringing the expertise from all the other clients that I've seen, and that's what you're talking about, the subtle part, not just to the tax part.
When you're looking at a tax return on April 14th, you're looking at a tax return. You're looking at a historical document filed with the IRS for a specific purpose. When you sit down with the client on April 16th now, you can look at the client. You can look at the client's business. You can look at the client's future. You simply can't do that on April 14th, but most tax professionals get in their mind that my business is about filling out forms for the government. Mm-hmm. Now, that's an important part of it, no denying it. But that's actually not where the magic happens.
No, yeah, you're 100% right. Um, I lost my place. Bear with me a second. I put my form
That's
back.
fine.
You mentioned something else. The two other advantages I guess you sell pretty heavily is, it's a customized plan for them. And
Right.
I guess a key thing for a business owner is they're never really sure if you're just a preparer that they're actually paying the lowest amount, are they?
They can't be. They can't. First of all, the tax system is so complicated that who the hell knows if they're paying the absolute lowest amount. The example I love is Mitt Romney. When he released his tax return for 2010, the world was outraged that he paid so little tax, and he said that, of course, I pay the lowest tax legally required. If I pay anything more than that, I don't think I'm fit to be president. Well, I looked at his tax return and I thought, okay, you've got a Schedule C business for your speaking income. I don't see a home office deduction.
Yeah.
By the way, you're not getting any medical deductions because your medical costs aren't more than 7.5% of your $13 million income. But if you hired your wife, Ann, to work for your speaking business, you could set up a medical expense reimbursement plan to write off your family medical expenses as a business deduction. You could also pay her a salary that she could then contribute to a retirement plan. Mitt Romney, you're paying more tax than you need to pay, and do you really think you're fit to be president? Or do you really want to go out on that particular limb?
Other than the home office that you mentioned, everything else needed to be talked about last year.
Everything needed to be talked about last year. We had a great discussion at a tax coach meeting 2 years ago in New Orleans. We did as a case study Barack Obama's tax return. And this was his biggest royalty earning year from his books, and we were able to, as a group, to find well over $100,000 in tax savings for President Obama. There's nobody who's taking advantage of every legitimate tax saving strategy out there simply because there are so many of them.
Yeah, and they're not planning. And you know what? You walked right into my next question is how much can a taxpayer save? And that's pretty difficult. I know that wasn't really the way I was going to ask the question, but you just kind of gave a great example there. It really, just about every taxpayer can save something by understanding the game and planning in advance. Just about.
For this audience of business owners, Wayne, I can't imagine there's anybody watching this that we couldn't save something for.
Yeah, I tend to.
I have not ever sat down with a business owner's tax return and not found a way to save money. And it doesn't mean that their old accountant was doing something wrong.
No.
It doesn't mean they were making mistakes. It just means that I had some knowledge. And you know what? If I prepare a tax return for a business owner, I'll bet that business owner can take the return to you, Wayne, and you can find something that I might have missed. That's just how the system works.
Yeah, and I was going to say exactly the same thing. If I was going to take any return I prepared and either gave it to you in a planning situation, and I can tell you from my own experience, give it to me in a planning situation. I prepared the return. And I find ways to save money because it's a different mindset, and it's not historical now. Everything we're talking about, we're not talking about breaking the law. I mean, neither one of us wants to go to jail.
No.
We're talking about 100% legal, right?
No, and the tax coach system has footnotes for most of the really good strategies anyway, so that you can see book, chapter, verse, exactly how legal everything is. The reality is that with all the clever strategies available for saving tax legally, you do not need to cheat to pay less tax.
I'm going to steal that one too. That's an excellent quote. I mean, because you're right. There's just so much out there. Another thing, just to tell you how serious I think you're on the right track, and I wish I'd found you about 10 years earlier. Honestly, I'd be a lot smarter than I am now, because you got it right. All right. This is about the only thing I ever do that I would guarantee, because I'd look at it and I can tell the client, I guarantee you're going to save 4 times more than I charge you. I mean, because I don't say it unless I've already looked at it and I know.
Right.
And is that?
I give clients a money-back guarantee on tax planning. I guarantee
Right.
they will think their money is well spent. I have no problem making that guarantee whatsoever.
And you probably never have had to give it back.
No.
I haven't. I mean,
no. The savings are there. we're in a very easy business, Wayne, where we
Oh,
can quantify our value to our clients. Not everybody watching this broadcast can quantify their value to their clients. We
right.
can quantify it very easily. I had a meeting once with a client, a prospective client at the time, who was retiring from a Fortune 500 company here in Cincinnati. And in that initial meeting, I found a strategy to save him over $1 million in tax in a single year. Now, that's very easy to quantify.
Yeah.
Very easy to reduce it to dollars and cents. And it surprises me how few accountants do that for their clients, how few accountants sit down and say, all right, let me think back over the past 3 or 4 or 5 years. What are the strategies I have suggested to this client? How much have they saved this client? How much have I actually been worth to this client over the course of our relationship? Most accountants can be twice as valuable for their clients without ever actually creating any new value, simply by doing a better job of communicating the value they have already delivered.
100% agree. I'm going to put one thing in here, then we're going to change subject. If the key point for anybody watching this, do some tax planning now. I mean, there's just,
Yes.
If you don't have anybody, we're going to talk about how to find somebody in your area. 2 things coming up. I'm going to make this a very interesting tax season planning. Tax-mageddon and the election. Why don't we take one and go ahead and talk to me? I did an article on Tax-mageddon in the last one, and I'm communicating it constantly to my clients, and we're going to even have a webinar on it, but talk to me a little on it.
Tax-mageddon is going to be the worst thing to ever happen in history, because a lot of great tax breaks are expiring. The way the budget process works in the United States with our government, most tax breaks are temporary. So at the end of this year, we're going to lose the 2% payroll tax holiday. We're going to lose the Bush tax cuts. We're going to see higher taxes from the new unearned income Medicare contribution. That's actually a tax, but if you call it an unearned income Medicare contribution,
sounds great.
It's a lot better.
Yeah.
So all these things are going to happen, and the Earth is going to be knocked off its rotation, and gravity is going to stop working, and everybody's taxes are going to go up. So it's important to plan for if for no other reason than to understand what's going to happen to your taxes beginning on January 1st, to give you a reason to become a part of the system. Now, is everything really going to happen as bad as they say it is? I think not. Congress and the president are going to have to act together to spare us from the worst of this. And the analogy I like is it's a fiscal cliff. Are we going to go off the cliff?
Right.
Or will Congress and the White House come up with a last-minute plan before January 1st? My own feeling, I'll go out on a limb here, I think that Barack Obama is going to win the election, but I think the Republicans are going to keep the House of Representatives. Mm-hmm. I don't believe they're going to reach any agreement before January 1st, and I think we are going to go off the cliff. But here's the interesting thing about cliffs, fiscal and otherwise. You remember the old Roadrunner cartoons? The coyote's chasing the Roadrunner, and the coyote runs off the cliff, and he does fine. He's running in midair, and he does just fine until he looks down and realizes that he's run off the cliff. I think that we're going to go off the fiscal cliff and probably pass something quickly enough that we won't realize that we've gone off the cliff and we won't fall. But tax planning is so crucial, because you got to understand, I talk about this new unearned income Medicare contribution and say that it sounds better than a tax. Well, if you're out there, if you're a business owner, you got to know, is this going to affect me or not?
Right.
You've got to know. If the Bush tax cuts expire and the capital gains rates go back up and the qualified dividend rates go away, you've got to understand, how much is this going to mean for me, dollars and cents, and what can I do about this? Should I be restructuring my investment portfolio so that I'm no longer earning interest income or the tax-favored qualified dividend income that I've been earning? And if that's the case, should I make changes in my IRA portfolio or my taxable portfolio? These things are going to happen, but you don't have to sit back and take them.
Right.
Planning is the key to give yourself some control over what happens.
And one of the things that you said is, I think you're right. I think, I'm not willing to predict who's going to win the election, but I don't think it matters. I think, and this is kind of what I'm telling my clients, part of what I'm running into is kind of the boy who cried wolf, because I told them the same thing in 2010. And somehow they magically came up with an agreement, surprised the heck out of me. And I've got some of the people that are remembering that. Some of my clients going, "Well, don't you think it's going to be the same?" I tend to agree with you. I don't think so. I think if Obama wins, he probably, and I kind of tend to agree with you. If he wins, the Republicans will probably stay there. There's probably something that'll take to wait for the new Congress and wait till next year. I don't know if Romney wins. What's the incentive for the Democrats to play ball? Let the cliff happen on their watch. And I don't see. I agree with you. I think this time it's not crying wolf.
I agree with you. Gridlock is going to be the result regardless of who wins.
Yeah.
So we're going to have gridlock. And no, it's not crying wolf. You have to be ready for what happens if there is no magical agreement. Everybody who's watching this broadcast has fire insurance on their house. It's not crying wolf if the house doesn't burn down.
Right, exactly. It's not. You kind of hit both questions at once, so I'm just going to move on. How does somebody watching this find a certified tax coach? What do they do?
You go to this wonderful place called the Internet, and if you haven't been there, kids, you should try it. The
kids aren't the problem; it's the guys with gray hair.
Seriously, my 7-year-old knows more about computers than I do. You go to certifiedtaxcoach.com. And there's a national directory, a searchable directory where you can go and put in your zip code and find the closest certified tax coach to you. If there's not one who's close enough to you to work with on a day-to-day basis, you can still find one in your area or close enough that you can work with long distance. Dominique Molina, who created the Certified Tax Coach program, has worked with clients in 20 different states. I've worked with clients in 30 different states. I've worked with plenty of clients who I've never met face-to-face.
Yeah.
We're doing this interview on Skype. Skype works for client interactions as well. CertifiedTaxCoach.com is the place to go and find somebody near you and pick up the phone and have a conversation. Do you feel comfortable with this person? Do you think they can understand your business, understand your goals? It's not just about short-term goals. When I sit down with a business owner, one of the first things I want to know is what's your exit strategy?
Right.
Most professionals don't ask that, and I've had business owners tell me, nobody has ever asked me what the exit strategy is. Well, I want to know. Do we want to position your business for growth? Do we want to take cash out of the business now? Knowing the client's exit strategy has a lot to do with what we're going to do on a day-to-day basis today.
Right.
So it's important to ask. I want to know about their family. I'm looking over your right shoulder on the Skype screen now, and I see you've got pictures.
This is my niece's office, but that's her husband, and yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
but you're right. We all have them in our office, so
we all have family. Family are important to us, and what about your family? When I talked about the example of Mitt Romney's tax return, I said that he is not hiring Ann Romney to work in his business. Well, I want to know from the business owner what's what kind of possibilities are available. So when you sit down to work with a certified tax coach, expect to have a discussion about more than just taxes.
Right. Yeah, as a matter of fact, definitely. And what you mentioned, and we're going to have a link to your website in the article, so that's not going to be a problem. But nowadays, working remote is no problem. I used to not take business clients that were out of town. We did a training with the technology out there. We trained somebody on QuickBooks. I've never met the bookkeeper. They're in Phoenix. I'm in El Paso.
Right.
So, no big deal. Ed, anything I didn't cover you think we should cover?
I just want to emphasize again the importance of acting now. If you're watching this broadcast on November 15th, you've got about 45 days left before the end of the year. And it really is like Cinderella's carriage turning into a pumpkin. At midnight on December 31st, a lot of these strategies that can save you thousands and perhaps even tens of thousands of dollars in taxes this year will expire. And you will have nobody to blame but yourself that you didn't act on it.
Yeah, no, thank you. Ed, great interview. I look forward to meeting you sometime in the future. I think it'd be great.
I look forward to it, and I'll be happy to talk with you again for your publication.
All right, thank you very much.